what you have to know, what you have to understand, and not just understand, but be committed to, is that if you really, truly want your body to respond and trust that it's going to respond in the best way possible with the most minimal effective dose, that treating it the right way, that's going to perform the best and last for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, then you have to think in your mind, no matter what I do today, no matter what expectation I have of myself, my ego, my the fact that I want to do this in 10 months, I have to recognize and be in touch with my body as best I can to treat it with respect and to understand that I want it to be there ready for me to use again tomorrow.
All right, here we go, buddy.
Welcome. Today is August 27th, 2020, and welcome aboard. This is Crushing Iron Podcast, and this is episode 402. I feel like I just asked you if it was 403, and you said, yeah, it's 403.
It is 403.
Yeah, it is. Well,
I think.
I stand corrected. Listen, this podcast can be, as with most of our podcasts, whatever you want it to be. But I'm pretty sure it's
Make it your own.
400, 4142. Yeah, we'll just say it's around 402, 403. And most of you don't listen to it in order anyway, so it's really, a moot point. But hey, we appreciate you tuning in and giving us your time. It's your first time listening. Welcome aboard. We know you have a lot of opportunities in the podcast world, plenty of triathlon podcasts. So we appreciate you giving us what will more than likely be about an hour of your time today. We hope you find it beneficial, and not just your triathlon life, but in your regular life. That's kind of our main focus of what we do in our podcast. We don't have an agenda. We don't have sponsors. We don't have ads. What we try to do is just share information, not just one that we've been sponsored to shove down your throat, but basically just experiences. Both Mike and I have been doing this sport for myself 15, 20 years now. Mike for a little over 7, as both coaches and athletes. And that's what we try to do, just share our experiences, the things we've been able to accomplish ourselves. We share a lot of stories with our athletes. And then if we can hopefully do a good job of offering that up in open conversation style format that's easily digestible and consumable to make it your own, and you can stay happy and healthy and enjoy your hobbyist career as a triathlete, then we will consider this a success. We are definitely not professionals. We are definitely not experts. We just have a shit ton of experience behind us, and that's what we really try to aim to do with this podcast, is share our experiences and hopefully prevent you from having to go through some of the same pitfalls and obstacles that we've gone through. And then listen, we all have obstacles every day, and we just try to do our best to share our experience through those. Hopefully helping you overcome those and enjoy a happy and healthy journey in the sport, in all endurance sports, but for triathlon specifically.
Yeah. And more than that, we're trying to keep you engaged in a lot of things. And I think that's what we do to ourselves. And obviously, you saw a little lack of engagement in me lately. No, it's been a struggle. So it's been a struggle for everybody. But yeah, I think it's important that we keep looking at what's going on and you keep communicating with each other and making friends and connecting. And boy, it's easy to lose connection in this sport, and especially when there's a pandemic going on and you're moving and you're starting a new business and all that kind of stuff. It's like there's so many things going on our minds. And I think that's a big part of it too, right? It's like, as much as we try not to get sucked in and caught up with things going on in the world, I think that happens. And I think we can kind of lose track of our ways, and it's important to sort of ground ourselves. And I think that's what, at least for me, the podcast usually does. It's sort of like, okay, you have to sit down with a purpose today and get focused. And you're trying to tell me to get focused on the bike again, and I think I need to do that, and I'm going to do it.
I'm not telling you. I just feel like I haven't.
Well, but you sensed it.
I can sense it. It's listen, like as a coach, like this has been, and I've talked about this on many of the previous podcasts we've done this entire year, especially since February. It's been an incredibly unique year, one that obviously and I've talked to a lot of other coaches too, just about the challenges, but also the benefits of having a year like this. And it's been unique. Obviously, no one has gone through a period like this as a coach or an athlete. And it's not just the removal of races that I think is like the quickest thing for people to kind of jump to, is that, oh, well, there's no races, so that makes this year unique. And while in a way that does, the other part of it is that, like, well, races aren't happening for a reason. It's not just like triathlon was like, hey, you know what? We're going to take this year off. The world is kind of as is, and things are normal. We're just not doing triathlons this year. Yeah. It's like triathlons aren't happening for this huge reason that is also affecting so many other areas of our lives. And that is why it's become such a hard year for so many athletes to find a groove, to find a schedule. And even in the middle of it, like you knew you were moving before the pandemic, but I've had so many athletes that have chosen to make other moves and adjustments during this period. But it's been a period of transition that we've all been forced into, whether we like it or not, with jobs that have gone remote, which, we talk about good stress and bad stress all the time, but there are good and bad stress to everything. Like, coming from a guy who has had the opportunity to work remotely for the last 3 or 4 years, it has its benefits, but it also has its disadvantages, because you feel like you can always work. Whether it's 5 a.m. in the morning, whether it's 10 p.m. at night, you can always work. And if you don't have a designated space in your home that has to be your office space, like, yes, you can work out, you can do your work in your PJs, and everybody thinks, oh, that's great, you get to work remote. But it also means that work is always 2 doors down. It's not,
it's omnipresent.
It is. And it's not like, so that presents its own challenge. It's like, well, now you have more time to spend with your family. But if you've gone through a family dynamic that is, well, my kids we've got 3 kids, my kids go to school, my husband goes to work, and then now, and that's great, our routine is there, we see each other, we get to catch up, and now it's, hey, we're all around each other all the time, 24/7. That's great, because you get some more family time. That also causes stress, because everyone's out of like their expectations. They make assumptions. It's very, very difficult. Mm-hmm. And obviously you've gone through a huge transition in terms of, living in Nashville for, close to 20 years, making the move to Chattanooga. The process wasn't super easy. You moved into a condo, and then that wasn't the one you knew you were going to buy. And then you had to move like 2 weeks later because somebody else was coming in. Then you go move across the street and move. It's like upheaval. And most endurance athletes, are already type A creature, and even if they're not type A, they're very much creatures of habit. And I know that about myself. I know that about you. You like things the way that you like things, the way that you like things. And when that is totally thrown into chaos with a move, with a new city, little things like that are stress, even if it's exciting, like opening up a training center and moving to a new city that you love, and you have a dog. It's like, it's still good stress is still stress, and you've had obviously your share of bad stress, but it takes a lot out of you, and it can make you think and wonder things that you normally wouldn't think and wonder about yourself as an athlete, as how focused you are, how motivated you are. And so you're not the only person, obviously, that's been dealing with it. Every athlete has dealt with it to some extent, and I'm amazed daily at the amount of athletes that overcome, some, not obstacles, but just how, like you said, how hard life is right now, and the things that pull and tug on you in different ways. And I was mentioning to an athlete this morning on Training Peaks that he was like, I'm just going to quit watching news. I was like, dude, I have been on that train for a while. I'm just going to keep my head down and work and do the best that I can. And while some people might think that's, well, you need to know what's going on in the world, you need to watch all these, political conventions, and you need to watch about the riots. And I'm like, no, you know what I need to do? I need to just keep my head down and work hard and do the best that I can for the things that generally are directly around me, like the athletes that we have coming in, and to hopefully impacting people in a positive way, and doing the little bit that I can to hopefully put a positive spin on people's days and people's attitudes and the way they see life, because that's the way I know that I can affect it. And athletes do that every day with their intentions, with the way they go out and run, the way they find time to ride. We've never needed more little wins in our lives that we've needed right now. And everyone loves the big win because it's this like huge thing. Right. But we've never needed more the little wins, the 20-minute runs, I didn't do the workout today, but I chose to run 50 minutes with my kid, and he biked next to me. And that's a huge win. It's like, we need little wins now more than we ever have. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you bring up the part about working and everything like that, and not watching news. And I think about it. First of all, it's difficult when there's so much going on, and I think that you feel like there's never an end to a lot of things. And certainly with our business, there's not an end to any. I mean, like you're saying, you could always drum up something. And when that's sort of like flickering in the back of your mind, I think it's difficult to even find rest and relaxation away from it, because it's like I've been struggling to figure out, you know, because on social media and all that stuff and the new, like, it's just such a, it feels like there's a hurricane obviously going on now, but it feels like a hurricane even without the hurricane. So it's been difficult for me to find escapes, if that makes sense. You know, like, and we talk about Netflix all the time, and I haven't had the wherewithal for some reason to find a new show, or, you know, or even get into like reading, because you feel like you're avoiding things, or you're not, you should be doing something else instead of just chilling and watching something or reading a book. I mean, like, for me, it's just been very difficult to get away into, like, hey, it's okay just to let it go. It's hard to let go. I guess that's what I'm getting at with all the stuff that's going on everywhere you look. Everybody that's texting you, your friends will be like, hey, did you see what just, and you're like, I was trying not to look at it.
Yeah.
And then you can't avoid it. It comes to you. And that's the interesting part about news anymore, is like, hey, you don't even have to watch the news to know what's going on.
It comes up as like a banner on your phone, unless you have like a, you know, the notifications and stuff blocked. Like, I don't get any of that. And I think people that know me well enough to not even like engage with that stuff, because again, like, while you might think that's, you know, I'm misinformed, I mean, I generally care, but I generally care more about like the energy that I have every day and the impact that I have the opportunity to make with the already like enormous amounts of responsibilities that you have, that I already have, as a husband, as a father, as a, you know, a coach, as a, you know, a business owner. Like, I already have these. And like, you wake up every day with only I say small amount, with only a specific amount of energy you have to burn. And most people don't even know how much that is until the day is over with, or until the energy is gone. Like, you might have, like, you know, a really great day of sleep, and then you wake up in the first few hours of your day, just absolutely zap you, and the rest of your day is a struggle. Or you might wake up and you think, oh, well, today's going to be a struggle, and I'm not going to have that great of a workout, so my day's going to go very poorly. And then you wake up and you're able to absolutely demolish the day. But as soon as you wake up, the first thing that you do from the last thing you do, you have a very specific amount of energy and what I would consider light, like positive things you can do with the world. And the more you scroll on social media, the more you engage with negative self-talk and people who just want to relentlessly complain about every single thing on the planet, that gets dimmed. Your light continues to get dimmed. Your attitude continues to get lower, and you get sucked into that. And you can either disengage from it, and you can either choose to ignore it. And, you know, people, you need to know what's going on in the world today. I know the world, and it pretty much sucks right now in a lot of ways, but you don't have to let that ruin your day. You can still get things done, because if you look back each day and how much you engage with things that were literally pointless, that you made zero impact on, that you affected zero change with, then there's so many opportunities you can have to go out and do positive things. And the best thing you can do, most people can do right now, is just go out and go for a 30-minute run and totally disengage with life and re-engage with themselves. And that's that's one of the biggest things that as a coach right now, I struggle with certain athletes to re-engage with themselves. And going back to, and I know I talk about it a lot, but like one of the very first quote that I heard in AA that I didn't like was, you know, the AA program is a selfish program by nature. And while I understand what they mean by that, it's like, you know, you have to only be in it for yourself. Like, it has to be all about, which I get that, but so much of what AA is built around too is about sharing, you know, strength and hope and your experiences and helping other people out with that, which is like the opposite of being selfish. It's like a very, you're giving back, so you're getting back in that way. And that's the way I see it. But so many athletes right now are choosing to let the world just kind of take them for a ride, you know, and I'm not saying that you can wake up every day and beat life, and that's not how I think. Some days, I mean, I had plenty of days last week where life basically just like took me out back and whipped me with a switch, you know, like, but it's how you get up the next day and you think, oh, here I go again. I'm just going to get beat today with another switch. But it's like, okay, well, yesterday was rough. Today I can still do a better job and still make time for myself. And like, for me, I didn't even really know this until I looked through my own training peaks yesterday, but I've ran like 11 days in a row, like 30, 45 minutes is all I've done. I didn't have the intent to go start some streak, and I don't intend it to continue on as a streak. But when I started it, the reason I kept doing it is because I knew that I needed at least 30 minutes to myself today. Now, if I get on the bike later, great, and I'd love to. But I knew I needed 30 to 40 minutes of an opportunity for myself to work through my own thoughts in a positive manner, and to not let the world and life and the difficulties of starting a business during a pandemic. And, you call the insurance company and they're like, wait a minute, you want to start a gym? We're not really into that right now. And so like you have all these things, and so if you don't take the time for yourself, and you don't have to look at it, as we kind of discussed on Monday, as, I'm doing this for performance. I think that's the trap that we often find ourselves in, is we always look to training as this has to lead to a performance gain in triathlon. If I don't have a race on the calendar, then what I'm doing right now is wasteful. I could be doing so other things with my time, but the performance that so many athletes right now are negating is the performance they have to do in performing in life. And they have more energy, they have more focus, they feel better about themselves, they're not complaining as much, their attitude is better, they feel healthier, they feel physically better. Like right now, we all need to perform our best at life, because life is throwing us curveballs and body shots every other day. And so if you can't flip that switch to, I don't have a race, I can't stay focused, look at it as in like what you all should be looking at anyway, is because we do this as a hobby, none of us get paid to do this, is, do I want my next doctor's appointment to go horribly wrong, and when my blood pressure is sky high, my cholesterol is up, everything's out of whack? Or do I want to treat myself the way that I need to treat myself and be more capable of withstanding the amount of stress and the amount of obstacles that life is throwing at us right now?
It's hard to get in front of that one too. I think sometimes you don't even know what you're doing, and you're trying to to beat something off in the future, like you're doing the right stuff, and it's hard to kind of keep that train, because you don't recognize it at the time. But like as I was moving here, I knew this was going on, and I've known that it was going on for months now. Is the grind of moving out of my old house and loading my U-Hauls and driving down here and unloading U-Hauls and driving back, and like the intensity of that move for me. And I put it on myself. I should have just, paid a few extra bucks to get somebody to help out or whatever. But I felt like I had that. I was excited about moving. And I think sometimes we're excited about a race or whatever. And we're pushing through this, like into this, unknown territory where we know it's probably trouble, but at the time it doesn't bother us. But it's always going to catch up with us. And it's hard to pull the reins back, I think, when you're in the thick of it, and that's what you talk about, burning a match or whatever. And I think that's, I think I burned a moving match here too, you know what I mean? And it's sort of the same thing, because in a race, you're like, you have it to burn, but then you might feel okay for a little while, but eventually it's going to keep catching up with you. So I love what you talk about, these 30-minute runs, because, I just, like I was saying, I started running a little bit here, and I did a 30-minute run. And the second day I went out there, and the first day I didn't wear a watch. The second day I wore a watch, and it was a totally different run. I was like, man, I've lost it, and I'm like, I still got it though. I wanted to push it just a little to get into this little area where I'm like, I still have it, which you still got it, within a reason, but there's no reason to push into that just yet. And I think we always do that, even on we can't, why is it so hard to accept going slow for a day or two? Like, we don't believe that we still have it. It's a weird phenomenon.
No, it is. I had the same thought this morning. It wasn't that to that extent, because I've been healthy and feeling good, but like it is amazing how many athletes truly struggle with the risk versus reward internal conversation. Like and that's like this time of year, like I tell athletes, like before you go run, check the weather. Like not as in like to deter you from doing it, but to go ahead and move your thought process and your mindset into an objective, realist conversation. So like I woke up this morning, Hayden and I was about to go head out to school, so I kissed him goodbye. I checked the weather, and it was, it's low 70s. Okay, no big deal. A little bit overcast, fine. Humidity 97%, dew point 73. So I immediately knew this is gonna suck. And it's not that this is going to suck, I don't want to do this. It's more of all right, what's the risk versus reward? It's going to be an easy zone 2 run. So I know I was taking a hillier route going close to Dayton Boulevard. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to take this route. and understand that basically it's impossible to have a breakout. If I do, fantastic. Like, this is going to be the greatest day ever. Like, I really know things are clicking.
Yeah.
But I knew already, like, if I'm managing risk versus reward, because I understood this from my run yesterday, that I didn't have the conversation. I was like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good today. The conditions were the same, 73 dew point, high humidity. I knew it was going to be, kind of insufferable, not the most conducive conditions. Ran for 45 minutes. In the last 20, I was like, I'm going to pick it up a little bit from kind of low zone 2 to high zone 2, just to get some more leg turnover and just to kind of see what happens. And I'm convincing myself, just to see what happens. But what I really wanted to see happen was to see my pace drop.
Exactly.
And I got done with the run, and I was like, what the F did I just accomplish those last 20 minutes besides feeling more shelled than I should have and getting 0% more performance advantage from a physiological aspect? So when I went out today, I was like, all right, dude, learn your lesson, go out and do this run. And after 20 minutes, it was only 35 minutes versus 45. It's a little bit shorter. Don't be tempted to push it because it's shorter. Understand that you're still getting the adaptation that you want to. Keep things relaxed, keep things reined in, and who gives a crap what the time says when you're done? And I did that, and I felt a million times better than I did the previous day, and that's the thing, is like, we talk about a lot, minimal effective dose. And this is something that guys really struggle with. You give them a range. What I mean by minimal effective dose, I mean, like, athletes, when they see zone 1, zone 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and you give them a range to do the workout in, whether it's running by feel on the run or by heart rate, or doing something by power on the bike. If they see a range on the bike that's power, it's like 200 to 240, they think, oh, well, I'm going to start out at 238 to 239, and I'm really going to touch the sky on these intervals. And then after 2 or 3, they're absolutely shelled. But you can get the same physiological response by just kind of hanging out in the middle. And again, on one of the very first podcasts we've ever did, and you go back to the time, is that the most all 90, 95% of workouts should give you energy, should talk about striking the match, like not burn a match, but just strike it. See how big the flame can be, put it out, put it aside for another day. And that's what most of your 90 to 95% of your sessions should be sharpening, not swinging the sword to see how much cut you can give to it. And so when I say minimal effective dose, I mean hanging out in the middle or even the low is generally, same goes for like zone 2 stuff. Like, people say like, oh, well, I'm giving you 65% to 72% of your power. Most athletes think, all right, well, I'm going to do 71% to start, and that's going to give me the best result. But you can hang out in the 65 to 66% and be there all day long and get the same response and feel incredible when you get done to go off into the next workout, versus always feeling like you have to push. And I know this as a person who, has obviously struggled with addiction, that more is always better. It's like, oh, I got a headache. Let's see, 2 Tylenol. Yeah, 3 is probably what's going to cut it today. Or
right.
2 sweeteners. Yeah. How about 3 sweeteners? And so you have that discussion. And so I think it's a discussion you should always have in understanding and managing your own stress. What is the risk versus reward, especially if you're a person who likes to work out in the morning or you have other things in life that are more stressful. We need our energy now. So these sessions should give you energy. And I'm not saying they should all be easy, but for the most part, they should feel appropriately challenging, because that's going to give you the strength to continue to overcome them. And have we ever in our lives, I mean, I'm sure we have, and I know I have, but like in a period right now for most people, have we ever needed to feel like we can continuously tackle and accept the challenge of things that are appropriately challenging versus these seem like impossible challenges, like homeschooling my 5 kids for the first time and managing my own work for the next 3 months?
Mm-hmm. I'm very intrigued by that range you talk about in the zone 2 range or whatever, or zone 3 or whatever the zone. But the range is like, you're right, man. It's like you see that high end number and you're always wanting to go there, and we don't understand, or it's difficult to understand, because this is sort of a continuous process, right? It's not like we kind of are reading the directions to how to put this table together and then we can put it together and it's done. We're always, it's like, it would be there another, just a hair more complicated table waiting at the end of that. And then we got to learn that and learn that. And that's sort of how this is like, to me, that's one of the more difficult things is like, I've been doing the sport for 8 years, and and we all want to see those big gains. I don't know how we can wrap our head around sometimes the idea that the gains just, will show up when they want to, or when they should, if we just follow the right, I guess, path to get there. And for me, that's always an interesting thing, is when we talk about accumulated fatigue and how your fitness is masked through that. And I like to talk about that a lot, because I think that at the core, that sort of is the key to triathlon training, is that it's this ongoing process, and we're always feeling just that hair, just some days more than other, but the fatigue is always there. And it's not going to be today when you have that. When we had an athlete that I'm working with, and she's continually hitting her PRs now, because she's been going through this phase where she's hitting them right in the middle of a workout when she least expects it. And that's always fascinating too. And I think that as we get through that, and then those become harder and harder to hit, we just want that feeling back. And maybe it is sort of the addictive nature of triathletes on some levels. We always want to kind of be able to carve out and actually write down and see, like, hey, I am getting better. But sometimes it's hard to see when you're getting better a lot of times, unless you have somebody like you pointing it out, I think. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was scrolling through my phone because I wanted to pull up a comment that totally echoes that sentiment. It was from an athlete in Florida, Nikki, and she said yesterday on a run, we talk about this all the time, like that when you try to force things to happen, and what you said about fatigue masks fitness, well, stress fatigues the hell out of you. Like, it totally wrecks you. So if your life is in not turmoil, but you're now home. Like, I've had another athlete in Texas, Nicole Winger. She started a part-time job. Her kids are homeschooling, and she has a totally new life in the last few weeks. And we're having to scale back her training in different ways because her life stress has gone way up. It's not that she can't handle the training. That normally it's not like she's getting more unfit or slower. It's because when she goes into a workout, her body is already more depleted from the stress of life. And so you have to manage those things in a way that allows athletes to be successful. And it's not about athletes getting weaker or not beginning mentally tough, or I'm just letting life get to me. Life gets to us all, whether we like it or not. It has nothing to do with your resiliency or your ability to stay focused or your mindset or how tough you are. Life is hard, and we have responsibilities. And as long as you're keeping up with those responsibilities, and those responsibilities go up, like having kids at home and virtual learning and picking up other jobs, like that takes a toll on you. But so that stress is fatigue. But going back to what Nikki said, this was a comment she made yesterday. She said, it feels really good to run 5 miles on a weekday. When I first started listening to the podcast, Mike would nonchalantly say he ran 4 or 5 miles that morning, and I'd think, I wish I could get a 5K in, much less than 5 miles. So this becoming a weekly occurrence is a huge milestone I didn't even realize that I had. And I just said, these are my favorite comments. There's so much growth here. And it's because of what you just said. You just wake up one day because you're involved in a process that is about incremental, small. It's not about marginal gains. I hate that phrase. It's about working hard. And it's about focusing on the things that you can control, and understanding that if you continue to pick up a few things here and there, you're going to, at the end of the day, it's like, if you wanted to look at a pile of rocks, if you're the guy that wants to go work as hard as they possibly can to pick up 3 gigantic rocks and struggle the entire time to pick them up and move them to a different area, you're probably going to fail a lot. You're probably going to hurt yourself a lot, and you may get 1 or 2 moved at the end of a couple months. Or you could be a person that wakes up every day and say, you know what? I'm going to head out my back door. I'm going to take as many, pea gravel sized rocks as I possibly can, but I can do it every day, and I can do a lot of it. The person who's going to have the most accumulate over the next couple of weeks and months is the guy who walks out the back door and picks up the pea gravel and says, I can do this a couple of times a day, and I can do it every day. And you're going to wake up and see that difference. But it's about doing it over time. And it's about having that kind of, and I say patience, even though most triathletes are inherently impatient. It's that your mindset and your motivation and your expectations are always down the road. They're never really understanding, and they're never looking in the rearview mirror. They're always looking straight out the windshield at what's next, what's 10 or 15 miles down the road. And it takes those moments and those days where you look in the rearview mirror and then you're like, oh, I have come a long way. And then you think, how did I get there? Oh, by just keep looking down the road and not expecting to get somewhere quicker, but just keeping my eye on the road and just continuing to do what I need to do to get better. And so if you can do those and you can establish those habits and be consistent and just do it from the start, and start little things that set you up to be successful. And I was talking about risk versus reward in training and finding the happy medium in the zone, because athletes are different. Some athletes respond really, really, really well to lower zone training. They get a huge stimulus out of it. Some athletes, you need to work them a little bit harder on the upper ranges to get the same stimulus. It's not about being a time crunch athlete. It's just more about understanding what kind of response an athletes have. And that's also not just a physical thing. So I have athletes that I know that when it comes to intervals that are longer than 3 or 4 minutes that are fairly difficult, running, cycling, whatever, I can't give it to them a lot, because they mentally get not defeated, but they mentally look at it and they're already kind of behind the 8 ball. They're working not themselves into an anxious moment, but they don't think they can do it. So while physically it may be what they need, you have to kind of manipulate the training to get them to do it the way you want them to do it without overloading them mentally and emotionally. Some athletes, they can do the same workout that's incredibly hard week after week after week after week. But then for them, you have to be careful of, they'll just keep digging themselves a hole if you just let them. And so it really is, and people change over time. Like I've had athletes that have gone from what I would call frequency responders, 5-6 runs a week, 3 to 4 rides a week. And now life has dictated availability, or their body has changed. And now it's like, well, I really only need to run you 3 or 4 times a week, but at a higher end. And you can't run them frequently in the higher end because the recovery cost is greater because they're running harder. So you have to change everything. You can't just do the same thing you've done over and over and over again. And that goes with the years. It goes with availability. It goes with life stress. As the same athlete in 2019 who could average 16 to 18 hours a week, who now in 2020 is now working, a different job with kids at home, might not have 16, 18 hours. And so if they don't, do you do the same training at 10 to 12, or do you manipulate training differently with the assumption that you might have more availability down the road, which is still an assumption you can't have because you just don't know. And so you have to be willing to kind of play with those things and understand that this is also a great time. And I tell some athletes this, for the last part of this year, since we know we're not racing, let's just kind of experiment some and figure some things out. Because athletes think every coach knows what they're going to be able to do, 2 or 3 months down the road. What am I on track? Like we have this crystal ball that, because they think that everything ahead of time, but you don't, because bodies respond differently. And as we've all seen the last few months, we have no idea what you're going to be facing in the next few months. So for me to keep an expectation of what it's going to make you or allow you to be on track sets us both up for failure. And so you just have to be able to, to tell an athlete, hey, we're going to figure out, do you work better with this? Do you work better with that? And have some fun with it. That's a part right now where you can be engaged with and kind of do your own. If you're self-coached, put yourself through experiments that are kind of hey, but the thing about experimenting is, if you really want a good data set and you really want to see if it's working, you have to stick with it. You can't just do it, which is what athletes are famous for. I did it for 1 or 2 weeks, and then you put athletes through 4 to 6 month heavy training, and they'll do 1 strength workout and come back and coach, strength training, man. It's totally changed me. I'm like, dude, you just went to the gym for 20 minutes and did 5 squats. Stop telling me it was your deadlift. But it takes time. So if you're going to experiment and trying to figure things out and see if something works, and that's something that you should do right now, you need to commit to sticking with it for at least 12 weeks before you can decide if it's working or not, so you can gather information and then use that as your next training block. Because if you do anything shorter than that, then all you're going to do is you're just going to be training for fun's sake, which also isn't bad. You're just not going to get enough information to make a valid, conclusion at the end.
I love what you said back there about the pea gravel and the boulder thing, because it's you want to build the pyramid in a day, right? It's but the pea gravel thing takes forever and it's hard to figure out, And as you were saying that, I was kind of going into my head here a little bit about this idea of, if you're trying to learn, say, calculus, you really have to get a good handle on basic math and then algebra. And because your mind knows if it understands, if you can figure out certain things. You can't do it, you know it, right? But sometimes your body, it's weird that how your body learns that kind of thing. And like the feedback you get from your body. That's why I'm such a big listen to my body kind of guy, because sometimes, going by numbers or whatever, I'm sure it helps and everything. But I really want to understand like how my body feels after, as I'm ramping up into a bigger block or something like that. I want to know if my body really is learning what it needs to learn. And sometimes I think it's just what I'm talking about? It's like a difficult thing to figure out if your muscle groups and your skeletal response is actually on. It's difficult to know if you're learning those little things along the way, if your muscles are learning how to handle running further, running harder, and things like that. You really have to kind of listen and pay attention to that. And for me, just the idea of combining that with the stress and just the understanding of knowing what it's going to take to do these races in the end and do them the way you want to do them. There's like all these complications. And then if you have your body lagging behind and understanding that, I think that's why you have to really kind of teach your body along the way too, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm trying to formulate there, but does that make any sense? It's like harder to understand what your muscles are thinking.
Well, yeah, because most athletes don't like it because they already have an expectation of what they do. And like I have this conversation with athletes all the time. Like your body doesn't care what you're thinking. It literally doesn't. It doesn't care about the timeline you have. It doesn't care about what you think is the best run route to take or the best distance to do today. If you sign up for a race you shouldn't have, like you can't fast track your body just because. It literally doesn't care. It doesn't know your race schedule. It doesn't know your expectations. It doesn't know, that you want to do 20 miles a day when you should probably only be doing 12. It only knows what it's done before and what it can handle today and how life stress is impacting it currently, because that also impacts its ability to perform that day. You wake up one day and you need to go run 10 miles and not even like including weather and terrain in the conversation and fatigue. You wake up one day and you have zero life stress and life is great and you run out 10 miles, your response is going to be significantly different than you wake up one day after you got done moving into your condo that took 2 days to move into. Your body's going to take and carry over the load from that stress, and your runs are going to be totally different. So your adaptation, your response is going to be totally different. So you're right. It's like you what you have to know, what you have to understand, and not just understand, but be committed to, is that if you really truly want your body to respond and trust that it's going to respond in the best way possible with the most minimal effective dose, that treating it the right way, that's going to perform the best and last for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, then you have to think in your mind, no matter what I do today, no matter what expectation I have of myself, my ego, my the fact that I want to do this in 10 months, I have to recognize and be in touch with my body as best I can to treat it with respect and to understand that I want it to be there ready for me to use again tomorrow. No matter what that looks like, if it means a great day or if it means a shit day, I have to be like, you know what? I just got to listen to you because you're the one that's going to carry me this long way. I can't. And I think that's part of the beauty of it, is that you look at people who, all of us who have like races that have been, pushed back to like, wait next year. Like, I don't know, I think it'd be an interesting, poll to take. It's like, because I think they would be overwhelmingly in one response. If you could pick, I can know exactly what I'm going to do on race day in 10 months, or I could not know. What would you pick? And how might that affect your motivation and ability to train? And would you be surprised? Would you be disappointed? Would it lead you down? Okay, because you might think, oh, well, I'd love to know because then I can know what I'm capable of doing. But what if it's because when it takes that time into account, it also it's just playing into the future. Like, life is going to be very difficult. Stress is going to be high. You're going to get sick. You're going to get injured, and you're going to see that time. And you're going to get totally discouraged. You're going to think, I don't want any part of that. I just would rather not do it. Or you're going to see this time that's, it's something that's going to blow your mind you never thought possible. And you're going to think, oh my gosh, you're going to heap all that pressure on yourself. So part of the journey that's so great is that you were talking about building the table and doing these things that never have an end date. Your growth in this sport should never be done. And people might say, oh, well, you start to get older and you're going to start, to have, slower times. And that doesn't mean that your growth has stopped. Performance and growth and getting better looks different as you get older. I mean, I have an athlete who's going to be going into one of the very first athletes I ever worked with, Dave Stock. He'll be going into the 75 to 79 age group range this next year. And so for him, it's not about beating the times that he'd had when he was in his 40s. It's about still being able to get up and participate in a sport that he loves and be healthy and feel like he's performing to the best of his ability, not his expectation, because our expectations are always clouded in previous performances and ego and other people and our competition and what we want out of life and what we expect out of ourselves. As soon as we think about an expectation, it becomes clouded, right? And your body's like, I don't know why you're thinking all these like random things. Like, I'm just going to do what I can do each day. And then who knows where we end up in a year, in 10 months. But that's the exciting part, is you don't know, but you get to be a part of the process that is infinitely unknown, because you don't know how good you're ever going to be. You could reach the pinnacle in 2 years. You could reach the pinnacle in 10 years. You just don't know. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts of our sport.
Yeah, it is. And that's like what you're talking about, Dave. It's like that's a maturity that's very difficult to accept sometimes, I think. Because you have to, I'm sure that he still feels like young and driven on one hand to go after that thing. But there's at some point, like, I have to get it out of my head, sometimes when people are like, that's just old man thought or whatever, because on one hand, it's like, it is weird, because I always try to juxtapose myself back to being like a 20-year-old kid or whatever, and be like, when I knew everything or whatever. And it's a weird thing, like, I'm just going to bring it up. I'm wearing this shirt these guys made for my dad. It's a tribute shirt that it says, in memory of Davy Joe, the master of nicknames. And my dad he gave, on the back, there's like 40 nicknames of all his buddies and stuff that he gave them that stuck. And it's a really weird thing. But they wear this for their golf trip that they have coming up. But anyway, I went through, he passed away on New Year's Eve. And I think that like my thing the whole time was like, Dad, come on, you can get up and do this and whatever. What you don't realize is, if you haven't been through life, or you haven't been through what he's been through, or what anybody's been through in this sport or whatever, we don't know where they're at, right? We think but it wasn't like as important to him anymore, because he'd been through so many things. And I think that that's part of this sport too, is like certain different things become important. And like with Dave, it's like, yeah, he wants to get up and feel good, I'm sure. He wants to feel, young and be able to do the sport. That's the important part. And that's why I always say, it was like, for me anymore, working out, getting done with a workout, if I feel better, that's the win. It's not about the numbers, and it really has never been about the numbers for me. I'm just not that way, but I want to feel like I get done and I've moved, or kept myself, it's like delaying that onset of what might end up happening. It's like, how can we stay on top of feeling good as long as we can? And that is really important. And sometimes I think that's why I'm so, just because I am older, and I think that's why I get almost a little bit bitter about the obsession with numbers, is that because I think it's easy to, especially for me, to lose track. Like I was saying the other day when I went running and I had the watch on for the first time, and it just destroyed the whole, because I had felt great the day before when I went and run, and then I went out with the watch, and I'm like, oh, I felt the same probably. And I'm sure I was running the same, but
you let a device tell you how you should feel about yourself.
100%, dude.
Yeah.
And that's what's so fascinating to me, is how to wrap your head into that place where you just want to feel good and just feel better tomorrow and feel better tomorrow. And how do you gauge that? I think that's the hard part, right? Is that we don't really have a device that necessarily tells us that. But that's why it's important to be in touch with how you feel, and be happy when you get done and you're not, I could go 10 more miles right now, but be okay with just sitting down and having a smoothie,
No, I mean, everyone needs that device, because it's like we were talking earlier in the podcast about the fact that, people purposely expose themselves to things that are negative, via social media or news outlets. You choose to do that. I'm sorry, but you can't just say, it's really getting to me. You're choosing to open up your app and be affected. So that's on you. Mm-hmm. The same thing goes with an athlete who runs out the door and uses a GPS unit or a Garmin. It's like, sometimes I get the text, well, my Garmin told me that run was unproductive. And you're thinking, okay, well, first off, turn off that setting and disregard. But it's just interesting how you'll see, and I see athletes comment like this, like you look at a run, you think that's a great run. And they look down just because they had the thought for no other reason that today was going to be a great day, that they looked down and the pace was a few seconds slower than they thought. And they're not devastated, but you would think it was the end of the world.
That's such a weird one, man.
They have a 30-minute, 45-minute, hour-long, whatever, wonderful experience. That they feel great, they're happy with what they're doing, they feel awesome, they might think they're going faster than they are, and then they look down at the end and it's like it's been wiped away, because this thing on their wrist that they wear, that someone made 1 billion miles away, that doesn't know who they are, what they're doing, or what they're going through, how the day really went, they're using that metric and response as a pass or fail day. And we make up these, like going back to small wins. Small wins lead to championships. But at the same time, we see this in every single sport, that rarely does the team with the fewest losses always win the championship. You just don't ever know. That's the great thing about sports, is like you train, and like I've gone into some of the best races I've ever had. I came in coming off an injury where I was probably better trained. We saw this in Kona last year with 2 of the top 3 finishers, that they had foot injuries that left them without running for a long period of time. And you thought, oh, well, looking on paper, no shot. Right. Tim O'Donnell, like he was aqua jogging, barely ran leading up to the race. And then he goes and like freaking crushes it for a second, an incredible finish. You just don't know. Small wins are important, and you should always go out looking for small wins, but we're also always going to have our share of losses. And that doesn't have to be how you look at yourself after every session. Life is going to give you enough losses. Why choose to make your workout a loss by overanalyzing from an expectations that your body has your body's like, I don't know what you're thinking. Like, your expectation means nothing to me. I'm just going to do what I do and enjoy my run. And you're like, well, I'm going to wipe that slate clean and label it as a bad run or a bad ride or a bad swim, even after I just spent the hour absolutely loving it. It's like it's the equivalent of going on this first date, and that's incredible, and you have the best time in the world with this male or female, and then you get in the car and you're like, all right, she's a Taurus. Let me look and see if I'm compatible. And you go up online and it's like, nope, not compatible. And you're like, well, there goes that. I guess I'm not going to call her back again. Like, no, life doesn't work that way. You can't always go with devices that tell you how great or how poor something is. And athletes continue to learn this as we oftentimes forget that 20 years ago, people were running, riding, and swimming just as fast as they are now. For most of us, all of them faster than we ever will without it. Yeah. With just a regular chrono watch and working off a spreadsheet, no power meters, no heart rate monitors, effort, and just paying attention and enjoying being a part of the process. Just because these tools and data are available, don't be fooled into believing that they're also a necessity to dictate your life and your training and what you really deem as the value in life. More money doesn't make you, like most people with a lot of money would tell you, it doesn't make for the best life. But yet people without it think, oh, I need more money to be happy.
Yeah, you always think you need what you don't have. And I think these, again, we know that numbers and power and everything, that's all valuable stuff. I think to me, it's about being able to control it, like really being able to control it instead of trying to let it use you. You know what I mean? Like if you're working, maybe it is a great indicator And back to we were talking about the ranges and things like that. If you can control that range and you can really own it, and it's sort of back to learning or whatever. If you can't just suddenly, because you were like, okay, today I'm just going to try and blow out of that range or whatever, and just to show that I can, because you can, but that's not necessarily the best way to get to the next level. So I always just think about when I'm in my best bike shape, I know that I own it. Like, I know that if I'm riding it and I can pick it up for a while, or if I have to, I can suck it up or whatever. And if I'm coming, like back into my zone or whatever, and the owning how you feel and how you can perform. And it is one thing to be able to do that, sitting in your room and a trainer. And it's another thing to be able to really see a hill and be like, all right, this is where I got to go a little bit or whatever. And feel comfortable in that, and know where your limits are, and understand that, because as we do half Ironman or full Ironman, you have to really be able to control yourself, man. It's just for me, it's all about control of that performance. And the minute your mind gets involved and starts thinking, man, I can do that, whatever, and you're going to blow yourself out.
One of the best ways you can use, and we can close with this, like if you love your watch and you love your bike computer and you love all these things, like, yes, they have a purpose, and I ask all my athletes to wear theirs. Some don't. Some use like an Apple Watch and just like hit complete his plan and fill things in. Like, and those athletes are still just as successful as the other ones. Like, you can use them, and they are valuable, but in my opinion, they're almost more valuable in a exploration aspect versus I always have to train with data aspect. And what I mean by that is,
that's what I was thinking.
only way that not the only way, but the way that I use my watch during a run is I'll run for the whole first mile and never look at it. Won't even look at it. A lot of runs I don't look at it at all, because I don't want to know, because frankly I don't care, because it's not going to. I don't want to also change my experience or how I'm listening to my body. But most athletes run the same routes all the time. They do the same things. So they generally know how what the temperature is. They're like, I'm probably going this today. And so a lot of times when it goes off, I'll tell myself that was probably low 850s. And if I'm really, really close, then I know that I'm really in touch with my body, and I should just take the day as it is. Now, if I look down and it pops up as like 820s, I'm thinking, man, I'm feeling pretty good today. Doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's going to make me run faster and run harder and force it. I should just enjoy the fact that my same 850 effort is now yielding an 820, instead of trying to, like I said, go for more, faster. To the same end, if you look down and you think, man, I'm really easy, and they're like, I'm working kind of hard today, I'm probably pushing 820s. You look up and it's got 910s, then you should be, all right, my level of exertion is much higher. My RPE is much higher for the result I'm getting. I really need to slow things down. Not I need to maintain this high RPE to keep my 910s because I'm afraid of who might see me on Strava and what that might look like. What my body's actually telling me to do, if I'm doing it correctly and running by perceived effort, is I actually need to drop my perceived effort even more, because my body is actually telling me that it's kind of a struggle, and that I need to slow down if I want to make this a beneficial run and not show myself and not turn it into something it's not. Same thing goes for a ride. The best when I'm ever in really good cycling shape, I can look down and know within 3 to 5 watts what I'm pushing. And if you can look down and think that, you're like, man, you really, really know your body. And what that does is it makes you need to look less. So you enjoy the experience more, and you get to know your body more, because it's all you're paying attention. You're not allowing that interference that is your watch, your GPS unit, to shift your mind one way or other from you got to go easier, you got to go harder, instead of just doing what your body is doing, which is the best thing it does for you, which is just move. Because I think we forget, like as incredible as power meters and our Garmin's are, and even our phones and Apple Watches, like your brain and your body are the most insane supercomputers on the planet that are capable of so many incredible things. But we forget that. We think that the wristwatch we have on, or the head unit on our bike, like that is the end all be all. And like, dude, like your mind and think of what your mind and your body can do, and the thought process it takes, and what you was able to learn. And like that's your greatest tool you already have. And most athletes ignore it and never do things by effort or by feel, and ignore what their watch says, and they let their watches drive it's like they're letting a robot inside their body. And like on race day, you need to know your body, because so many athletes will make massive mistakes on race day when they go into a race thinking, they get out of the water, they feel like they're on the top of the world, they had a great swim, they probably overswam because they probably didn't swim train enough. They get on the bike in the first 15 minutes, they look down and they're thinking, all right, my RPE should be maybe high zone 2, low zone 3, but I should be feeling pretty good right now, pushing whatever, 220. And they look down and they're like, I need to slow it down, so I'm probably pushing too high. And they look down and it says like 195. The first conversation you're having now is, I got to pick up the power.
Mm-hmm.
But what your body is saying is, please don't. Please give me more time to get my legs underneath me, because right now I don't have it. And some athletes see that during workouts. It just means your body still hasn't like woke up yet. You don't need to force feed it. It's like telling someone they can't fit any more food in their mouth. Like, oh, no, you need to finish this up. I'm going to put some more and they end up choking. Like, finish it off. Like, take things, in small chunks and listen to your body. Because if you don't, you're going to force that 220. And by mile 30, you're going to be toast. You're going to be sitting up on your bike thinking, this is going to be the worst day ever. Or you could really take it off super easy and be like, all right, now I got, and then mile 30 hits and you got your fluids in you and you got your fueling and your legs get warm and you're kind of getting into the flow. And then you're like, there they are.
Right.
And then you can still have the best race you can have that day, even though that might not be the race you wanted it to be when you woke up that morning.
Mm. I think you nailed it right there for me, is the power meters and things like that, just like to be able to really build that connection between your mind and your body. That to me, and own that and own all those feelings and be able to look down and be like, know almost exactly how many watts you're pushing. Those kind of things, I think that's where it is, rather than having the device lead the train. It's like, if you want to, like, I got to get to that because, that's what it's saying or whatever. But being able to own that space, no matter where you're at, and really build that. Because think about what you can do with your mind and your body. You hear about these incredible feats that humans do all the time that had no idea that they had that potential. And they can do that. So that's, for me, building that connection and that relationship. And that's sort of like the hardwiring of all this stuff, is like have that good mind-body connect that's going to allow you to genuinely do some things that you just can't believe right now, or you can't see, instead of just thinking about some phantom, like random algorithm type thing. And I obviously I'm just way into the human body.
It's about what you're allowing or not allowing your body to learn. So if and so many athletes now that they've become addicted to devices and not doing things by feel, is they don't know their body. They don't know how to problem solve or critically think their way through a race that might not go well, because it'd be equivalent of like putting two kids in a room, and you continuously give them note cards to take the test, and they get all the answers right in front of them. Say like, oh well, 200 watts, okay, 200 watts, 300 watts, 300 watts. Like, this is my range, this is my range. This, all I know is what's in front of me on paper. I don't really know it. I just know how to use it.
Right.
And then you take those away and you put them in a room and ask them to critically think and problem solve. They're thinking, wait a minute, where are my answers? I need to know what to do here. Or it has to be absolute. And racing is never absolute. Something is always going to go wrong. You're going to feel incredible. You're going to feel terrible. You're going to feel like you've had too much fluid. You're going to think you've had too little fluid. You're going to think you're short on, calories. You're going to think you've had too many calories. You're going to, start the swim and think off, how am I going to manage like a 70.3 Ironman today because my arms are already tired after 500 meters. And they're going to hop on the run, think, how am I going to make it 13 or 26 miles? Everything changes, and you have to be able to critically think your way through an event by using, like, understanding your body. And if you spend 6 to 8 to 12 months just not listening to it, then you can't expect it to speak to you on race day.
Yeah, and I always say, what are you going to do if your battery dies? What would happen? Do you think, if you're so committed to that? And that's why I think it's great to have, if you have that understanding, you don't need it, but you can reference it throughout and I don't know if that's how you race or not.
It's a great reference. Like, you shouldn't be married to it, but you should use, like, Chattanooga 2 years ago. I had raced awesome in Texas and came out of the water feeling awesome, had an incredible bike and paced it perfectly. In Chattanooga, the first 25 miles, I was toast. I had nothing. I could barely. I wanted to average like 215 to 225. I was struggling the first 10 miles to even push 190. I felt terrible. It was super humid. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to, I slow it down to like 180s. And I gave myself like 5 miles to like get my wits about me. And just, I was like, maybe my legs need to wake up. They're just not where they need to be today. And then 10 or 15 miles later, I was able to raise it up and ended up finishing out like almost averaging in that range.
Well, that's
I just brought it home at a much higher pace because I felt so good, but I would have ruined it if I had forced it that day, because after 20 minutes, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm toast. But you have to be able to critically think and listen to your body and just swallow your pride and your ego and think like, all right, I know I had this expectation today. I hate getting past. I wish I could do this today compared to what, how I was supposed to race a month ago. But I just got to understand that what I have is what I have. And it might not be what I want, but I can't use what I want if I don't have it. And that's just an understanding that people have to work their way through with training and doing specific times of workouts and longer things that are harder and coming in negative split or working on back end intervals on the bike. Like there's just a lot of things you can do to help promote that thought process and that feeling. But again, like you just can't listen to your body if it's the first time on race day and expect to like really truly understand it.
Works for me, man. But I don't know shit about fuck.
Some people don't. Hey, that was an hour-long cast. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't, or if you have and you want to go back, hop over to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things camps, coaching, and community, and also where we house our online hub. Check that out. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, Mike is your man, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to me directly for any of the same, you can always get in touch with me, c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it.